Hey, Howard Jacobson here. Welcome to today's Plant Yourself podcast. A quick reminder, this podcast is free for everyone and supported by patrons. So if you would like to find out about becoming a patron of the show and helping us out, helping defray the cost, helping to spread the message, you can do so at plantyourself.com/gift. Thanks so much and enjoy today's episode. Hey, welcome to another daily edition of the Plant Yourself podcast. South African lockdown episode, day number 6. So I got a treat for you today. This is a regular length episode. It's an interview. Managed to connect via Skype with Glenn Murphy, who is one of the people that you most want to have in your corner at a time like this. Glenn is a martial artist. He is also a scientist, and he is the developer of stressproof.net. And if there's one thing everyone is experiencing right now, it is stress. And it's a different kind of stress than we normally feel in certain ways. And in some ways, it is an elongated, taffy-like, non-stop experience of stress. And so Glenn and I got on the Skype to talk about how this current threat of the virus is really not within humans' mental capacity to handle. It's a present danger, it's a clear danger, but it's also an invisible danger. It's not how our brains are supposed to deal with stress. And so Glenn offers insight, biological underpinnings to help us understand what we're going through and why we're going through it. So that'll help us be a little less, self-judgmental and self-questioning. Helps us understand that our reactions are in fact normal, which can have a calming effect all by themselves. He also leads me and you through a wonderful guided visualization exercise that he learned from his teacher, Vladimir Vasiliev, the North American founder of Sistema, which is the martial art that he and I practice, that Glenn is my teacher of. And it's called the 5 Senses meditation. And it helps us to become embodied. So when I asked Glenn for strategies to help us deal, I was thinking about he's going to show us this breath technique and this stretch and that sort of thing. But he's a much more systems thinker than that. And so he goes into immediately like the 4 steps of any sort of crisis response, which will be useful, in this situation and in many other situations as well. So let's have a listen. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts, either in comments on the Facebook page, facebook.com/plantyourself, or email me, hj@plantyourself.com, or on the show notes on the episode at plantyourself.com. And another reminder, we're still here in South Africa, day 6 of the lockdown, and I'm putting out these podcasts daily as a service to you and as a way to stay sane for me. And if you'd like to support the show, you can just go to the tip jar at plantyourself.com/gift. Every little bit helps, as we are in our 4th week now of South African exile. Today was the day we were supposed to get on a plane to go back home. You can make a one-time contribution or become a monthly patron of the show. Again, that's at plantyourself.com/gift. All right, so let's get to it. Here is the conversation on stress in the time of COVID-19 with Glenn Murphy. Enjoy.
Howie, good to see you, my friend.
You too, Glenn. It's amazing that we can get such a sharp image from so far away.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We were just saying that usually you live about 10, 15 miles down the road in Pittsburgh, and right now you're in South Africa, and the audio and video quality is better than we're in North Carolina.
Yeah, I guess that transatlantic trunk line just massages the pixels perfectly.
Something like that, must be. So can you tell whereabouts are you again now, just now?
Yeah, we're in what's called Cathkin Park. It's a resort area near Winterton, South Africa, which is near Ladysmith, which is where Ladysmith Black Mambazo comes from. So it's a Zulu.
I've heard of them. Brilliant.
Yeah, it's a Zulu area, and we are in lockdown at a wedding resort that we were booked into. And then the announcement came first that Americans couldn't leave their resorts, their hotel rooms that the management had to provide for them, bring them food, and then the whole country went on lockdown. So we're here at the Wits End Mountain Resort. Basically, it's a wedding chapel with little chalets.
Okay, so not the absolute worst place to be on lockdown.
No, I would say it's probably in the top 1%. You know, if you can't afford David Geffen's $590 million yacht, then this is maybe a close second.
Yeah, it's been nice following your occasional Facebook posts and things with just random zebras just walking up in the back garden and noshing things and just all the sights and sounds that you've got around you. So it's a little bit different from North Carolina.
Yeah, well, our basic drama right now is that there's a troop of about 20 vervet monkeys who are really good at getting into our house. Like they were coming through open doors, then we closed the doors, then they found open windows even with bars, and then they figured out how to turn the handle on the door. So it's like that scene in Planet of the Apes,
Jurassic Park,
where they learned how to use machine guns.
Now they can open doors. I was actually, when you first described that on Facebook, I was more picturing kind of a simian Home Alone kind of situation where you're putting like paint pots on top of doors and thumbtacks on the ground and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sure if we got a trap that I would trip it first.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they're probably the smarter of the smarter primates within the area. So, great. Well, that's at least it brings some comedy value to your enforced incarceration there.
Yes, as long as there's another loaf of bread in the store tomorrow, we can, we don't have to mourn the loss of today's loaf.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so how is the situation down there? How are people dealing with kind of the measures that the local government have taken? Because it's varying so widely across the world. I mean, you've got a lot of dictatorial nations, people in like Brazil and Iran and stuff, where people are just kind of covering things up and trying to just press forward and almost show some sort of denial. I'm not going to kind of get onto that in a minute. And in an effort to kind of keep the economy going and just be like, no, this will all be fine, let's get going. And then like obviously massive spread. And then you've got others that are cracking right down on things to the extent that people are getting arrested for going for a stroll. I mean, my parents are in southern Spain and they've been on lockdown for over a month and will be at least until mid-April. But they're literally, if they go out of their apartment and go down to the beach, which is right near their house, they can get arrested for going on the beach. So it's what's the situation there in South Africa?
Yeah, so it is a military lockdown. The National Defense Force and the police are encouraged to arrest lawbreakers. So they've arrested people who have. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. Yeah,
okay.
Sorry, we just I think we're getting a bit scratchy, so I cut the video.
I'll do the same. So that especially like they're being deployed in townships in areas of great vulnerability and very high population density, and there's no love there for the government. So I think yesterday there were like a couple hundred arrests of people who were flouting it, including people who posted on Facebook. Here we are drinking at the Shebeen. We're united. We're not going to let this, And there's also been reports I saw in today's newspaper that of police and military brutality. So, but that's really? From the news, from TV, and we haven't up here. People are tending to be extra cautious, and there's a lot of posts around here about this is the patriotic thing to do, to just stick to yourself.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, it's been very varied here. I mean, obviously, the United States it's a continent, right? And I'm reminded of that whenever something like this happens, but especially so at the moment. It's that there's not one response across the whole of the states. It's not a united response. I mean, it's partly because there hasn't been a united response from the federal level, really. It's been kind of back and forth for quite a while. So the individual towns and cities and states are kind of taking it upon themselves to apply measures as and when. Usually their hospitals fill up, right? So it's basically once they get to a certain proportion of, all right, we've got only 10% of the beds left and the numbers look like they're still going up exponentially, then they're taking kind of drastic measures ahead of what the government is telling them to do. So we here in Durham, North Carolina, the mayor shut down public gatherings and so my Systema group, where we meet and we teach and we move and breathe and shove each other around, that got shut down as a result of not being able to gather in gyms. So he shut down gyms and yoga studios and massage places, stuff like that. So the physical contact went first, and then for a while we shifted outside and met under kind of elaborate social distancing rules. We met outside and swung sticks around and stayed like 8 feet away from each other and just moved together in the outdoors, thinking that was going to be okay. And then like the parks got shut down, the national parks. We live right near River State Park, this beautiful, forested area right close to us, and now that's even shut down like 2 days ago, so we can't go on our own to the forest to walk around. They've closed it off, so which seems really sad, and it seems a little bit pointless to me. I'm not quite sure how long they think an aerosol is going to stay around in the open forest, but anyway. but there's but the point is there's been a wide range of different measures from states that acted very early, and North Carolina has acted fairly early. The whole state's in lockdown now, to others like in Mississippi, like quite famously, where they're like, nah, we'll just keep it going. And they've even had crowded religious services last weekend, and people swapping virus while they're there. So it's not been a very unified or congruent response across the board, and it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. And obviously the States right now is leading the world in numbers, and partly because obviously we're a bigger population than a lot of other places, but it's but if you look at the exponentials, and sadly not many people understand how exponential numbers work. They're still saying more people died of flu last year, and I'm like, yeah, give it 48 hours. Right?
Yeah.
It's that's kind of
I saw a great
it's starting to catch up with people's denial now. So people went through denial, now they're all like, oh yeah, this is serious. And there's somebody I know in hospital, and there's somebody I know on a ventilator. So it's getting to the point where people can't deny it, and they can't just talk about it being an overreaction. They're realizing that we've got to do something, and now the argument's turning to, all right, how long is this supposed to last, and what's prudent when you weigh it up against the economy and all of those things.
Yeah, I saw a great meme. It had a picture of a exponential growth chart, and the legend was number of people who have been exposed to an exponential growth chart.
Yeah, true. Yeah. But it's an interesting comeback for the nerds. A lot of the time scientists are just kind of like sidelined or ridiculed, or like, oh, they don't know everything. But like in these times, everybody wants to turn to some sort of impartial measure of what's happening, and us nerds come into our own at this point.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see the backlash against even, I think, fairly well reasoned perspectives that are not the party line. So let's circle the wagons, almost to like the orthodoxy. Like we can't even talk about like, oh well, maybe the rates are much lower than we think because so many people haven't been tested and could be asymptomatically positive, and when you shut down the fake news, inevitably you shut down some interesting outlier perspectives that may have some value as well.
Sure. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, definitely. But at the end of the day, we're all just trying to kind of sift through this and find some sort of focal point, right, from which we can hang the rest of our lives and move on, and in whatever that form that looks like at the moment. And people are finding that difficult when the news sources aren't congruent. It's tough. Yeah. So coming to like ways of dealing with it, obviously you and I both deal a lot in helping people with general health, but also with stress in particular, and how we can use the methods and the techniques that we've developed in order to get people through things. And I've been obviously thinking a lot about this, and we've scrambled to put all of our our regular training sessions online to try and first and foremost really maintain some sort of sense of structure in people's days, because when you're forced into something like this, when there's just looming uncertainty, and it's not really clear when that's going to end, right? And nobody can say, oh, this is definitely going to be done by April, much as our esteemed leader keeps like putting random dates on things. Nobody knows, not even the scientists know, because nobody has successfully come out of this yet, right? Everybody's looking at China and South Korea and people that were early into the fray for some sort of clue as to how long it might take, as what happens after it peaks and troughs, and is it going to bounce back and all those things. But nobody really knows. It's fair to say that we just don't know yet. And with that looming uncertainty there, people just kind of feels structureless, and people are being forced into obviously working from home. For some people, remote working, this is almost no change. We've got a few people that work in the Systema group.
Yeah, well, for
some
me,
of my students and clients who basically work from home all the time, and they're just like, well, this is the same. I just don't have to put on pants, So I could just do my podcast, or I can do my remote working, or I can do my analysis or numbers or whatever it's going to be in group meetings on Zoom, and it doesn't really change very much. But for others, they've had their lives turned upside down. We've got like a couple of our group members are hairdressers, and they got sacked immediately because their hair salon shut down in Cabra, and they couldn't go back. And I've got, like myself, there's lots of us have families with young kids, and as soon as the schools all get shut down, now you're homeschooling kids while you're trying to work from home. So it's a very, very different situation for different people with different kind of family situations, different living situations, and different work situations, right? So people are dealing with it in different ways. And one of the things that we've tried to do is just provide these ongoing live stream classes, not just send out the odd video and the odd article or something, but to say, look, show up at this time and this day, just like you always have, and we're all going to be here. We might be on Zoom, and we might be talking to each other through the wires in the air here, but we're all doing this thing together, and having that regular check-in point of doing breath work in the morning, and then checking in at noon to do a class, and then again at 6:30. It just gives people some structure from which to hang their day, and I think that psychologically is one of the most important things when you've got uncertainty like this looming.
Yeah, I think there's real value to the structure, and I think there's also, people are realizing how badly we need social interaction. So like before this, a lot of people, and me included, weren't getting a whole lot of social interaction, but we didn't really feel like we missed it. It's like I was saying to you before we started recording, here I am on this 80-hectare property, and all I want to do is jump the fence and go somewhere else. It's like being told that we can't socially connect with people really kind of highlights our deep human need to be in a tribe.
Mm. Yeah, and even before that, what's funny to me is that as soon as they started enacting the social distancing laws and telling people that they couldn't assemble in pubs or couldn't assemble in restaurants and things like that, right away, we just saw, and this was during the period where we were training outside, we just saw triple, quadruple, 12 times the number of people out on walks, on trails, in parks. It wasn't until we were told that we had to stay indoors and stay on the internet that people decided they had to go out for a walk. So people are rediscovering the outside because they're being told they can't go outside and hang out with each other too much. And people are rediscovering each other and social contact because they're being told that they can't. So it's ironic, really, that we don't see the value of these things until they're taken away. Yeah.
So for people who are stuck inside, more or less, like, do you have tips and tricks, and like what aside from the live classes, and we can get a URL for those if people want to check them out, but like just normal people, what are you finding works for you, for other people? What are the pillars of your practice that you have found valuable and that you've maybe ramped up a bit for yourself and your family?
Well, in the methodology that we use, we actually start with motivation and meaning. Right? It's like you decide why you're doing what you're doing today first. What's the purpose of whatever it is that I'm going to attempt to do, right? And from there, you go on to make sure you're embodied. You make sure that your body is stable, that it's calm, that it's not in a high agitation state. It's not super anxious. It's not angry, right? And it can seem like strange language, like your body is separate from your brain. But in some ways, it has its own kind of reactions and responses. And we talk about this a lot in our stress proof course, right? How it's almost like an elephant and a rider, to coin the old Buddhist term, right? Where you have this person sitting on top of this angry, terrified elephant, and all you can really do is hope to feel what it wants and then try and kind of calm it down and then steer it a little bit. If you try and yank the elephant in a bunch of different directions, you try and get your body to just press on and do things, it will react and respond, and it will not always be in ways that you want it to. You'll end up snapping at your spouse and shouting at people and, just eating for comfort, or just dropping all of your exercise routines. Whatever else it is that keeps you healthy will go out the window if you don't understand that you have to pay attention to your body and actually remain embodied. So the first thing is finding the meaning, and the second thing is finding your body. And then you can go on to like how you think about it, right? How you make sense of it, what your psyche is doing, how your mind is responding to this whole crisis. And from there, you can start to plan. Like after that, you can start to plan. So I think I would start with meaning. And for this, there was a really interesting article. I think it was in Harvard Business Review, and it was forwarded to me from a friend of mine, Jen Zuckerman. And it featured an author called David Kessler, who is a specialist on grief. And he's recently written a book called The Sixth Stage of Grieving, which he coins as meaning, right? You have those classic phases of with grief, right, that people always talk about. You go from denial to acceptance through various other stages like bargaining and anger on the way through, right? And it's fairly well established that these exist, even though they can kind of happen in different orders. But the point that he was making in this article is that what we're actually feeling right now under this kind of loss of freedom, loss of work, loss of income, loss of routine, loss of purpose, even loss of identity. For some people, if they can't do the job they were supposed to do, they're like, well, what do I do now? I can't just sit around and play Xbox and watch Netflix, right? I have to have a purpose, and losing that, it's an overreaching sense of general loss. And he says what you're feeling is grief, right? It really is. It's like you're grieving the loss of your everyday routine, your everyday life, your contact with your friends, your contact with your colleagues, all of these things, and the loss of the stability that you took for granted, right? The ability to pay the mortgage and the ability to feed your kids. All of these things is gone. And so we're responding to this loss in much the same way as we respond to the loss of a person, right? Or even the anticipated loss of a person. So, if you look at it through the classical kind of map, the first thing that happens is denial, right? And you can't believe that this person is gone, or you can't believe that this situation has changed. And that's what people did. They're like, and some people still are, and some entire countries are still doing that. Like, this virus won't affect us. This is not a big deal. It's no different to flu, and they act as if there's nothing wrong, and that can be dangerous, right? And then there's anger. And I definitely went through this one. Like, you're angry at whoever it is that imposed these laws that make you stay at home and take away your activities and your livelihood, and you're raging. You want to blame somebody. You can't blame a little collection of proteins and fats, right? So you have to find a person that you can blame so that you can be angry about it. And then you've got bargaining. So, all right, maybe if I do social distancing for a couple of weeks and everybody else does that, we'll be back on in April the 12th, right? You're like, this is fine, but it's temporary, right? So we go through that stage. And then the scientists tell us, well, we don't know how long this is going to be. We might be here for months. And then there's sadness, like genuine sadness. Like, I don't know how this will end. I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills. I'm just deeply sad about this whole situation. And then finally, at some point, maybe you find your way around to acceptance, which is, all right, this is happening. There's a global shutdown. There's a virus. The economy is probably going to be buggered for a while. My mode of making a living might have changed, and I have to homeschool the kids, and I have to figure out how to interact with everybody in a different way. But I have to figure it out, right? This is happening, and I'm accepting that this is happening, and I have to move on. So where do I get there, right? How do I do it? What rules do I apply to myself in order to move on? And I think you have to kind of give yourself a chance to go through those stages. And I think by this time, a good number of us have gone through these. But some of us are still stuck in denial, right? And some of us are still stuck in bargaining, just hoping this is only going to be a couple of weeks. And I think that's if not a dangerous, then certainly an unproductive mindset to maintain in all of this. Have you seen any of this in your experience with people that you know?
I'm seeing people have been too busy, to go deep, I found. And maybe that's starting to change. But I also have not been in touch with people in the same way I think that you have. Just because we have to hike up a hill to get internet, and it's spotty, and there's a 6 to 9 hour time difference. What I've seen more of is sort of a hamster wheel stress response. Yeah, like people just feeling anxious. I've talked a lot to my sister. She and her husband, she's in her late 60s. She and her husband are in a small apartment in Manhattan on the 10th floor of a building. They have not left in like a month. So I'm seeing more like stir craziness than existential crises.
Yeah, I mean, and that's also to be expected from the situation, right? So what's happening is that there's something really bad happening. and our brains know it. We're reading about it in the news. If we have a close relative that's in the hospital or somebody that's been directly affected, then maybe it's more visceral and it's more real for us. We actually see somebody that's, gone into, is on a ventilator or something, something more extreme has happened and we're directly worried about them. We can see it if they have symptoms. But if not, this is all kind of a little bit kind of ephemeral. We're kind of looking at it through Facebook and social media and news reports, and we're reading about this. So our brains know that something bad is happening, but we can't see it, right? And in a very real sense, this totally breaks our sense of safety, our sense of collective safety. Our primitive minds are like limbic systems that are programmed, as we talk about in the stress proof course, are programmed to look for danger and then kind of get you ready in fight or flight or freeze or even shut down, right? As a response of dealing with this, it's broken. It doesn't know what's happening. It's like it's getting all these signals saying there's danger, and it's like, all right, where is it? What do we fight? What do we prepare for? And we can't see it. Right. So all we've got to go on is ascending figures, abstract figures in news reports, and whether or not people around us are taking measures. Right. So in the same way as if you're there in South Africa, maybe there's, some prey animal in a field and one of them kind of thinks he sees like a pair of ears breaking the surface of the grasslands or something. Right. He'll be like, whoop, whoop, look out. I think there's something there. But then if nothing happens and the predator kind of slinks into the background, that gazelle or whatever will probably just go back to eating, right? But if he pricks up his ears and looks around and there are at least 4 or 5 other gazelles looking around, then that collective response will be like, all right, it's not just me, right? We're all doing something. And if one of them starts running, they'll all start running, So what we tend to do is to look to our immediate social group, our immediate peers, to see how they're responding to things. Now, if we live in a place where everybody's in denial and everybody's like, nah, I'm just going to go to work, or I'm just going to go to Florida for spring break, right? So some demographics are not taking it seriously, the younger demographic in particular, because the virus has been shown to be nowhere near as dangerous to them. And so they're being kind of cavalier about it. And there are even arrests in Florida and all that kind of stuff where people are flaunting the rules there. So what your peer group is doing will influence to a great extent how you deal with it. If everybody in your peer group is panicking, then you'll probably panic as well. And there's every kind of gray shade in between. So I think one of the things to recognize is that we're not well equipped to deal with this. Our brains aren't well equipped to deal with abstract concepts of danger. That our brains are looking for real physical dangers, and we can't see them right now. It's a disease. It's a virus, and these have been around since ancestral times. But the way that we normally deal with that is that we look at people who are showing symptoms, like they're sick, they're snotty, they have, boils, or they have like some manifestation of feverish, sweating, some manifestation of sickness outwardly. And then we typically, sadly, we express disgust for those. Like that's our main response mechanism for keeping us away from people who are sick with something that might be contagious. That's one of the things that disgust is for, right? That and avoiding food poisoning, right? And so we tend to kind of avoid. But when we can't actually see people in our environment that are doing that, we're just looking at all these healthy people going for walks and social distancing, and we're like, what are we really doing here? I'm being told on one level that we're fundamentally unsafe and we have to be careful, but I'm not seeing – your primitive brain is like, I'm not seeing the direct evidence of this, so let's keep us all on a – constant orange alert to keep us nervous. Let's keep the blood supply going constantly to the head and the sense organs and to the limbs. And this plays havoc with digestion. It plays havoc with sleep. Like insomnia is going to be rife. I know it is right now because people are on this constant high alert. But how? And it's a collective loss of safety. It's like everybody is feeling it. Right?
But how is that different from the normal mental construct stress response? So like, stress is for, wild animals and hailstorms and things like that to like tell us that we are in danger to get us to take an action. But most of us, our stress comes from emails and alarm clocks and traffic and things that are phantom anyway. How is this different?
Well, in a lot of ways, that's a good point. It's not. What this is doing is that it's just highlighting how much that's happening to us anyway, like in the absence of a coronavirus or, like a nuclear threat or something else that's really abstract. Our brains, our primitive limbic systems look for something else to be threatened by. And it might be the irritable email from the boss. It might be like the threat of financial security vaguely coming down the pipe that you're getting bad signals about. So we find things to stress about in small ways. But the difference with this is that the signal is so much stronger, like it's more akin to when something like there's an active shooter situation and then it's all over the news. And then for days, people feel unsafe and they worry about their kids going back to school. And then one doesn't happen for a little while. I mean, this is going to be a little bit America centric because active shooter things don't happen all the time, all over the place. But for a while, it's all people can think about. And then after about a month, there hasn't been one and it just becomes part of the new normal. Coronavirus hasn't become part of the new normal yet. People aren't comfortable with the idea that this thing is floating about and that it seems okay for some people, but randomly it can strike other people. If you're over a certain age group, it's much more likely to get you. If you're immunosuppressed, you have lung problems, it's much more likely to make you sick. All of those things, right? So the problem is that everybody's going to, most of the people in this country at least, or most people in the world are going to be exposed to the virus, but not everybody expresses symptoms. And it's that weird dissonance between catching it, right? It's not like you're trying to not to catch it at all. All you're really trying to do is limit the exposure of vulnerable people to this virus so they don't express symptoms at a rate that outstrips our systemic ability to deal with it. So again, there's another abstract level there where what we're actually being asked to do is be overprotective of people that we might not even know, right? We're not really being called upon to protect ourselves. We're being called upon to protect other people. And that calls for deep kind of reserves of compassion and altruism that not all of us are practiced in developing, I think. So I think there's one key difference there is that most of the time we worry about our own, right? We worry about ourselves and we worry about our kids. Maybe if we have an elderly parent, like I have two elderly parents in the south of Spain, so I'm worried about them. Anybody who has a parent over the age of 60 or 70 or somebody with lung problems is more worried now than people who don't, right? If you're just a nuclear family and your parents have already passed on or something and you're just living home with your two kids, you're more worried about the economic situation, really.
But is it?
It's more of there's a group loss of safety and there's a call for group altruism and compassion and acting in somebody else's interests, and that's not easy for people.
Yeah,
I think.
well, where I see that happen is in wartime when there is a face of an enemy, right? Like so, like in the famously British and Americans, during World War II. Made huge sacrifices for soldiers, for people they didn't know. But it was, I remember in 1979, my father was the New Jersey Commissioner of Energy, and that was during the Iran hostage crisis, and Ayatollah Khomeini was the big bad guy, and there was a poster that had been approved. I don't think my father had a hand in approving it, but he didn't stop it either, and I was appalled. It had a picture of Khomeini on a billboard, and it said, "Drive 55, fight back." And it unsettled me at the age of 14 for reasons I did not understand until much later. But I understand also why they were using a human enemy, a face of an enemy. And here it seems like we're being told to we are all one tribe, like all of humanity has to be on the same team, and that seems very difficult to accept in this geopolitical reality.
It is, and especially when that message isn't consistent. We've got some people, in power calling it a Chinese virus and trying to put blame on specific groups, in order to again put a face and put an object to put a person on this, so we have somewhere to put our blame instead of collectively seeing this as a threat. And that's part of the problem. The virus doesn't care about us at all. The virus is a parasite. It uses us to get passed to other things. So it doesn't care about our politics. It doesn't care about it doesn't care about our religion. It doesn't care about any of the other kind of philosophical differences between people. It's just going to do its thing. So we're being called upon to band together in a way that simultaneously to band together, but also to isolate to that end, right? So it's very strange. There's a lot of kind of dissonance going on, and in what we're being asked to do and what we're being asked to accept. So that's the landscape that we're left to deal with, right? We have this confusion, we have this uncertainty, we have this sense of loss. So I think probably going back to your original question about what can people do, I think the first thing to do is kind of just to try and find your way to that acceptance as soon as you can, right? Not to force yourself through the stages of it, but to mull it over in your mind and ask yourself, what am I feeling? Am I feeling sad? Am I just trying to stay busy in an effort to distract myself from the fact that this is going on, and kind of making little bargains with myself that this will all be over soon and I don't need to change my behavior or my lifestyle or my thought patterns very much. Things will go back to normal, and this too shall pass, right? And it's difficult because there's some value in that viewpoint, but not if this too will not pass within the next month, right? If we're going to be stuck in this for a few months or maybe even longer, depending on if it recurs. I don't think the world is going to be the same after we emerge out of this. It's not big. I mean, at the very least, there's going to be an economic depression. We won't abruptly all go back to work and start hugging and kissing and everything with people immediately. There's going to be there's going to be a letdown. There's going to be some measures, and maybe some people will be still protected and vulnerable and some people won't. But until we have like a global vaccine or a global antiviral treatment that can literally just alleviate the threat of this thing, it's not going to be the same, and that's still going to be at least half a year to a year and a half off, depending on how quickly they fast track things, right? So I think acceptance and being like, all right, well, this is, at least now, this is the new normal. How do we move on from here? How do we figure out how to proceed? And then that comes to like some very specific things that you can do, I think, in order to avoid sabotaging yourself and making the situation worse. So would it be helpful now to go through a few of those?
Yes, please.
Cool. Okay, so the first one, and I'm not alone in saying this, is to try and kind of control or balance out your positive and negative thinking a little bit, right? And I don't mean in just kind of like a woo-woo, hey, think positive, go to your happy place thing. Of course, we can't do that. We know we're not in a happy place, and a lot of us are in worse places than others. If you're self-employed and your income just completely dried up overnight and you just don't know how you're going to pay the bills, there's no going to your happy place that's going to solve this. But what I mean is that if you're in the habit of doing a worst case scenario analysis, right? If you're in a habit of being like, all right, what's the worst that can happen? And you keep reading the news through that lens, there's really no good place to go with this, because the worst that can happen is very, very, very bad. And if you can't imagine any silver lining to this, if you can't imagine any possible best case scenarios, like somebody comes up with an antiviral treatment and it goes away quicker than we thought, or we're stuck in the situation, but somehow I managed to turn my business around such that I can connect with people and I'm doing actually even better than I was beforehand, or I'm forced to, stay home and the economic situation is not great, but alleviated of the pressures of daily work, I suddenly realized that I haven't been spending contact time with my family, and I'm reconnecting with my kids, and I'm spending more time outside, right? There might be benefits to this that we can't see right away. And I think giving yourself kind of limiting your diet of bad news, like the constant consumption of bad news on social media. I mean, it's okay to, like you said, follow the science and follow the figures, but you don't want to read too many opinion pieces about how bad it can get. And there's part of the 24-hour news cycle is just trying to come up with things to feed you while you're there, right? So you have to limit your psychological diet a little bit and try to balance out the worst case scenario thinking with best case scenario thinking. Try and kind of prepare yourself and be like, okay, well, if this is the worst case scenario, how can I prepare for this? And some of that might be physical preparation. It might be, having like an adequate amount of food or resources or things like that in your house. Not crazy prepping and stockpiling toilet paper, but just having enough, just making sure that you feel okay and comfortable for now, right? No need to panic, but being a little bit prepared can help you feel a little bit like, well, if the worst happens, we'll survive, right?
Right.
So that's
and you know what?
Control negative and positive thinking.
Yeah, and what that reminds me of is our conversation about tech proofing, which is that the technologies, the media that are feeding us coronavirus information have not fundamentally changed their business model, which is essentially infinite scroll. Like they always want us to watch the next thing, and when it feels like it's a breaking news story, they're going to milk it for all it's worth, and it can feel irresponsible to turn it off. Right, even though what we're watching is, okay, here's a report from the streets of Spain, here's a report from a hospital in Brooklyn, here's a report from a rally in Buenos Aires, things that have nothing to do with us in our daily lives, nor do we have the power, most of us, to react to those things. And yet we still feel like, we have to pay attention to everything and realize that that's an artifact that was true when we were watching, cat videos.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a big deal. And again, it's one of those things that was a problem before this hit that has just been thrown into sharp relief, and it just shows us how much of a problem it can be for us, right? And that actually brings us neatly onto the second point, which is number 2, get out of your head, right? Don't spend all day in your thought processes. You have to remain in the present, and you have to remain embodied, by which I mean you have to remind yourself that you have a body and you're experiencing life second by second, moment by moment. You live here and now. If all you're thinking about is the future, like how bad it can get, and reading news reports and social media, like just checking in on what you think is going to happen the whole time, you are not going to live in the present. You're not going to make good decisions for the present. And you cannot remain productive, and you cannot remain actually even calm and comfortable, because you've got this constant sense of anxiety. It's been said that, anxiety is a malady caused by an obsession with the future, in the same way that depression is basically a preoccupation with the past, right? If you constantly think about everything that you've lost as a result of this, you'll become depressed. If you constantly think about what you have to do and what needs to be done and how good or how bad things might get, then you can get into anxiety that way. So it's really important every single day, several times a day, right, to get back into your body. And there's a very simple exercise for doing this, and it's one actually that was passed to me by my instructor in Systema, Vladimir Vasiliev, right? And he just calls it 5 senses. I don't think this is unique to Systema. You actually find it outside of Russian systems. You find it in a lot of mindfulness-based practices as well. I've seen it in Tibetan meditation, mindfulness meditation, and Buddhist, Indian mindfulness meditation, all kinds of different stuff as well. So it's a very simple exercise. I can take you through it just now if you want to. Do you want to give it a quick go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. This should work since you're outside. It'll be really nice too. Okay.
Okay.
So just find yourself a spot, and you can either lay down flat on your back, or you can just sit in the chair. But just begin by straightening out your spine, relaxing yourself, and close your eyes. Forget about vision for a minute. And then turn your attention to sound. Try and pick out at least one sound that's very close by to you, right? One of the sounds might be my British tones droning away in your eardrums right now. But try and pick out something else. If you're indoors, try and pick out something that's inside the room. Might be the whir of air conditioning, scratching of a cat against the door, whatever it is. And then turn your attention to things further away. So it might be things outside the room, outside the building. If you're already outside, listen for distant sounds, not just the birds or crickets nearby, but maybe distant traffic, or if there's no traffic right now, other sounds at more of a distance, right? And see if you can pick out like up to 5 different sounds. You might not be able to pick out 5, but try. Put that much attention on your hearing that you can try and discern 5 different sounds. Okay, then next, turn your attention to smell and to taste. See if you can just inhale gently through the nose. See what you can smell. A lot of us don't pay very much attention to our olfactory senses, and some of us think we don't have much of a sense of smell, but you can develop it if you try. But the goal here is not really to do that. It's just to get out of your thinking brain, get back into your sense of sensory experience. So pick out at least one smell, at least one taste. It might be whatever you had for breakfast or lunch. It might be the smell of fresh clothing, cut grass, zebra dung. It's all contextual, right? And again, try and pick out at least 5 smells or tastes. And then go to touch. So try and feel the sensation of the clothes on your body, whether they're stretched tight across your body in some places, hanging loose in others, chafing, itchy. And feel the points of contact between yourself and the ground or against the chair if you're sitting down in a chair. Just feel the sensation of pressure in the skin and the muscles, the fascia. And also any air currents moving across your skin. This can be inside the room. You can feel them from air conditioning. If you're outside, just light breezes. Or just even the difference between exposed areas of the body and areas that are covered, right? You'll feel that as a kind of background signal. Then acknowledge your vision now, not by opening your eyes, but just by looking into the back of your eyelids, and just notice that your vision is still switched on, right? It doesn't go off just because you close your eyes. That you can still see something, like little patterns behind your eyelids. Some sort of visual input is going on. Then turn your attention to the sense of weight of your body. Feel the weight of your bones, of your muscles, whether you're lying down or seated. Get a sense of how heavy you are, how heavy each leg is, how heavy each arm is. Maybe compare the left with the right side. And then finally, get a sense of pressure within your body. So every time you inhale, you add volume to your body. It's trapped against your skin. So as you inhale, your body pressurizes. You can feel the pressure build in your chest, in your stomach, in your pelvic floor. If you're sensitive to it, you might even feel the pressure shifting in your arms and your legs as you breathe in. And as you breathe out, that pressure eases off, right? Gas leaves your body, you deflate like an airbed, and there's less pressure. And as you inhale and the body becomes pressurized, you might also be able to feel more strongly the sensation of your pulse, of the blood pressure moving through your major arteries. Obviously, you can feel it at the chest, at your heart. You can probably feel it in the stomach, depending on how tense you are around the lower back and the stomach. You might feel it in the neck, in the temples, behind the eyes. If you're really relaxed, you'll feel it in the shoulders, the insides of the elbows, the hands and fingers, hips and groin, backs of the knees, and even the toes. The more relaxed you are, the more of that sensation of alternating pressure with every heartbeat that you'll feel against the background of constant pressure that your body provides. Now, having done all that, slowly open your eyes and just take in the sensation of sight, just as if you're not really trying to focus on anything. You're not trying to label anything. You're not trying to make any decisions. You're just receiving input through your eyeballs. Just patterns of light and shadow and color. And that's just one more signal. And just recognize that this is who and what you are, right? You're the thing that feels and observes all of these things. And this is your natural state. From here, you can move, you can breathe, you can go for a walk, you can exercise, you can do whatever you want. But now you're kind of freed from that constant loop of just thinking about things, which loops your stress response and keeps you trapped in unproductive patterns of thought where you get lost in yourself. And that's it. Cool. So how do you feel?
I feel more integrated.
Yeah.
Like it felt before, like, I've got so many balls that I'm juggling or so many irons in the fire. And, like part of my brain has been chasing, like, do I need to tell Delta that I'm not going to take that flight from JFK, or am I going to lose the tickets? And what are we going to do for dinner? And, and bringing it back to what it feels like my essence. Like, I am the witness, or I am the experiencer of what's going on right here, right now. And that I have some say in what those things are.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important, you can do this at the start of the day, especially if you wake up and you've had trouble sleeping and you wake up and you can't think about anything else, but, I've got a plan for all these things and, what's going to happen next. Instead of starting the day by picking up your phone and checking the latest coronavirus updates, right? Get up and start the day like this. Just embody yourself and be present. And then maybe around lunchtime, do it again. Right. And there's no harm to doing it right before sleep either. Right. It's if you check in with yourself a few times a day like this and just remain embodied, It will help you to stay focused on the present and what you can do and also what you can't do in the present, right? Rather than letting your runaway thought patterns just loop you into anxiety and stress the entire time.
I love it.
Great. So so that brings on to the last couple of things, which is observe and allow, right? And this is something we talk about a lot in Systema. But again, you'll see it in mindfulness disciplines, and you'll even see it in kind of psychological interventions like MBSR, right? Or mindfulness-based stress reduction, right? And that's, don't kind of suppress your feelings, right? If you're feeling sad, if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling angry, don't try and push them down and deny the fact that you're feeling them, right? And think, I'm stronger than this, I'm not really feeling any emotions. Just watch them for a minute, right? Just sit, take a breath, relax yourself as much as possible, and then just kind of look at it and name it and be like, yeah, I'm feeling really sad right now. I am definitely very, very sad. I don't know when this is going to end. And a friend of mine has a father who's in hospital on a ventilator. You know, it's like that kind of thing. Just allow yourself to name it and label it, and then look at it. Like, look directly at how that feels in your body. How does that feel in terms of pressure, blood pressure, tension inside your body? And just the simple act of stopping and looking at it like that will probably decrease its duration, right? It will probably evaporate sooner when you do that. Conversely, if you try and ignore it and suppress it and push it down, you'll maintain it. You'll feed it for longer, right? It will kind of stay there. You're this little window running in the background, this little like extra kind of carrying capacity will maintain your anger and frustration in the background, and it will come out at some other point during the day. So don't suppress emotions. Stop. Allow yourself to name them, label them, look at them for a little while, and then try that embodying exercise again and see if you can't just kind of decrease the half-life of that emotion. Just let it kind of dissolve into your body, and then go back about your day. Allow yourself to feel those emotions and just look at them, right? Observe and allow. And then let go of what it is that you can't control, right? You stop arguing with idiots on the internet, right? I fell foul of this, especially in the first couple of weeks, and now I've dialed back like drastically, right? People are going to think what they think, right? There's going to be conspiracy theorists saying this was designed to take power away from us and all that kind of stuff, and there's going to be doomsayers who can't stop posting about how terrible everything is, and there's going to be people at every spectrum in between, right? And likewise, not just people on the internet, but when you see people flaunting social distancing rules and they're going out and they're being, deliberately cavalier about this, and to your mind, putting people's lives in danger, not yours and mine maybe, but, somebody's granddad that we know, or somebody with a lung problem, or some immunosuppressed child, right? That makes us angry, but we can't control other people's behavior. We can't tell them, shout at them and get them to change their behavior. So we can control what we do, but we can't control what other people do. So stop raging about what people are doing. Stop raging at people on the internet arguing with idiots. Just let go of what you can't control and try and control what you can, right? You can't control what legislation they're going to pass in Congress. You can't even really control whether the insurance company is going to pay out or whether Delta are going to refund you for that ticket, right? You can call them, you can do stuff, and you can kind of argue about it and that kind of stuff, but you can't really control it, right? So again, that's part of the acceptance of the situation that's going on, I think. And then the last thing, and this brings us back to kind of that article that David Kessler wrote, and that's try and find meaning, right? It's not enough just to find survival in the situation and be like, all right, I'll get by. Because every other day, your mind will be like, there's got to be more to it than this. I can't just survive and get through to the next day and tomorrow. Sometimes that's the best that you can do, right? If you're having a really bad day, the best that you can do is just try and calm your body down, try and reconnect with yourself, get back in the present, watch your emotions evaporate, and then just run that day out, write it off, and start again tomorrow. Sometimes it's the best we can do. But we should try to aspire to a little more than that, because if we can find meaning in the situation, and it might be however small, right? It might be that this thing allows us to connect with people that we haven't talked to for years, or this thing has reminded us how much we isolated ourselves on purpose and unnecessarily, and now we want to get out in the outdoors and go for walks, or we want to do other things. Like just acknowledging those changes. For me, one of the first things I did was start a pub quiz, right? So we're having a virtual pub quiz every Friday night with the group of people that I coach. And it's phenomenal. We have teams of people that get together and we spend 2-3 hours having a few drinks and having some laughs and telling questions and stuff like that. And some enormous social cohesion has come out of that for me, right? And I'm sure for a few other people too. So just find whatever it is, find whatever kind of light that you can in the situation and try and find some meaning in it. Maybe, you'll find some entrepreneurial spark in this and you'll succeed and you'll do better than you did under. But that's not really the goal. The goal is just to find some sort of purpose that might be different to the purpose that you had pre-coronavirus. And it might continue to be different afterwards. We might as well be practical about this and say, this is the situation we're living under now. What's my purpose now? What's my meaning now? What can I do that's useful, right? And it might be as simple as helping people, or or it might be things like there was an application that allows young kids to talk to elderly people who are isolated in their homes or in nursing homes and they can't see each other via Zoom. They'll just tell stories to old people, stuff like that. It's like the equivalent of Meals on Wheels, something like that. If you feel like you're helping somebody or doing something.
Chat roulette without the perverts.
Yeah, there you go. Whatever floats your boat, or even with the perverts, whatever you want. Yeah. Perverts are isolated too, so it's like they're people too. Damn it. Yeah, I mean, so just finding that meaning.
So do you?
Yeah.
Do you have a way of helping people? Because it's so important for people to take their medicine, whatever their medicine is, to heal themselves. But I'm seeing a lot of people who are saying, "Hey, I went off my diet." Like, and to me, like, oh, this is like the worst time in the world to go off your diet, right? Like, just like this is when you got to feed your troops, your immune system.
Yeah.
But, people are like, oh, this is soul food, this thing that I stopped eating. Like, do you have a way for people to sort of self-assess? Is like, because it feels like the pub quiz and a really decadent meal are very different, and yet they feel similar. Like, it's just escape, it's fun, etc.
Yeah.
Like, how do you help people navigate and discern?
Well, actually, that's kind of more your expertise and purview. So my purview, what I'm looking at doing is taking people from kind of panic states and kind of difficulty and chronic stress. And so if people want to find out about my resources, about how to go from there to getting control of their nervous system, literally training the nervous system so that they can deal with daily life easier, right? And to feel more resilient on a daily basis and experience less of these random peaks and troughs. Then they can go to stressproof.net, all one word, or they can visit us at NC Sistema and physically train the Russian martial art that we train in order to condition our bodies and our minds, and that's NC Sistema. And you just go to ncsistema.com/online. But if people are looking for ways to manage their general health and their diet, and if they were trying to stick to some sort of exercise or diet routine or something like that beforehand, and now it's just gone out the window, I would recommend actually they go see you. They actually get coached on it. They sign up for a program where they can get accountability. And as I understand, you do everything remotely, right? So this still enables you to help people from where you're at.
Yeah, now I can use different hours,
Yeah, definitely. You can get people like in the first thing in the morning. So how would people find out about you and your programs with the Big Change program or other things like that?
Yeah, so they can go to Plant Yourself. I'm now doing a daily podcast. I've been doing a weekly podcast for 7 years, but since I'm here and I have plenty of time on my hands and I brought all my podcasting equipment, I'm doing a daily 15-minute or so reflections on the time of COVID-19. So, I talked about everyone's talking about what is essential services, essential goods, essential employees. And I wanted to see what do we learn about what's essential about ourselves? Like, what is our essence? What can we learn from this? I did another one about, I guess this morning or yesterday, about control and what's in our control and what's not in our control. Today I talked about gratitude and how struck I was by a post I saw where someone said, don't say you're stuck in your house, say you're safe in your house. Right? And just like all the things that I have, we're traveling. I'm traveling out of a carry-on bag, not even a check bag. And everything that I brought, I'm like, I'm so glad I have this. Like, I've never had that experience before. Whereas, I'm so glad I brought 3 pairs of shorts. It's like, But now, we're in lockdown, you can't buy anything. So everything I brought, I'm like, oh, I'm so happy I have that, extra cable. I'm so happy I packed a new dental floss.
Right.
just seeing, so I'm doing that on a daily basis. People have been telling me it's helpful.
Great.
And I think that's go to that and subscribe and join the email list. And I'm starting to put things out for folks. I put out some guided relaxation exercises for the homebound and stressed out today, and that's a pay what you can offering, so people can get it for free, or they can pay whatever amount of money. And we'll probably be starting another WellStart Health coaching program within a couple of weeks, and that's
okay.
So that's where I'm at.
Great, brilliant. Yeah, well, I'll stick links and URLs to all those things on the show notes for this, and hopefully people can find their ways to where they need to be.
And I'll do that. I'll do likewise. Now, for people who want to do Systema virtually, if they go to ncsystema.com/online, if they've never done it before, is it for them, or is it just for people who've been doing it for years and already know the lingo and the movements?
No, it's a mixture. And there are some classes that are easier to roll into than others. We have a class today, for example, at noon American Eastern Time, which is just called breathwork. So it's literally just lying around in relaxed positions, focusing on your breath and how you can use it in different ways to different mental and physical ends, and then combining that with exercise in various ways and gentle movement. So that one's very gentle. There's a movement class tomorrow, which is for restoring lost mobility, which can happen via stress or via injury or sickness, other things like that. And then some of them are a little bit more martial. Some of them teach you more specific skills, but for the most part, while we're training in a distributed way, I'm not going to say remote because remote sounds just negative and terrible. For the most part, what we're doing is giving people ways of training on their own, but together, if that makes sense, like movements that you can make within like a 10 by 10 foot square that are going to be beneficial to health, to skill development, to mobility, to all those things. So there's kind of something for everybody. You can just roll in there. And again, same sort of thing. We have like a recommended pricing for training with us online, but it's a sliding scale. And if you really can't afford much more than a minimal amount per month, then that's what you'll pay.
Great. So folks who've never done it before can get started.
Yeah, and to clarify, it's Systema is still more of kind of like a movement specific martial art type thing. So if they're looking just for the stress exercises, they're looking just for the ability to stay calm, then they should go to stressproof.net instead and look at our courses, which are just more geared towards understanding your nervous system and getting control over it directly. That might be a starting point for a lot of people, doing the basic Stressproof online course. And then from there, if they want to get ambitious, then they can go on to doing Systema and other things. But there's value in both. It depends where you are in life.
Very good. Very good. Well, so any parting words for...
No, just having done all those things and talked all about, let's work on acceptance and let's work on understanding the problem and balance your thinking and let go of what you can't control and observe and allow. All of that said, just take it easy on yourself. I mean, really, it's a difficult time. So just allow yourself some failure, allow yourself some off days. It's going to be up and down. It's going to be like that for a while. You'll probably feel like you're good with it. And then a couple of days later, you feel like you've lost your groove and you're back to square one or even regressed. And like you tend to say with diet plans, like if you fall off the wagon, the most important thing is to get back on again as quickly as possible, right? Everybody falls off the wagon and actually failing and then regrouping and restarting again, whether it's restarting a diet plan or whether it's recommitting to breathing, movement, training, to just centering yourself once a day, whatever it's going to be. The act of regrouping, having fallen, is actually what reinforces the habit and makes it stronger, and actually is what builds resilience, right? So unless we fail, unless we know we need these things, unless our bodies and brains become truly grateful for what it is that we're trying to do to them, right? then we're not really going to use them or benefit from them in the same way. So just go easy on yourself. It's going to be rough for a little while. So allow yourself some fun here and there. Allow yourself to do a pub quiz, to watch a little Netflix, to whatever it is that you need to decompress a little bit. But just kind of keep that in the wider context of keeping yourself healthy and keeping yourself calm as you go as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Glenn, thank you as always for enlightening me, for taking me through that wonderful guided Five Senses tour and for all the work you do to help people stay safe and sane and proactive.
Yeah, likewise, Howie. Keep fighting the good fight from South Africa or wherever it is that you find yourself marooned.
Yep. Well, we're here for a while, so I'll let you know when we feel it's safe to or it's possible to fly.
Right. Well, in the meantime, good luck with your ongoing battle with the vervet monkeys.
Yep. They have the bluest testicles. I got it.
I feel like I shouldn't say anything. I just want to end the podcast on that line.
That's
definitely going to be the quote that goes in the thing.
Yeah, happy to oblige. All right, man. Take care. Love to the family.
And to yours. Cheers.
Bye.
All right, time for thanks. Thanks to Will Ridenauer for allowing me to use his beautiful song Sabali Dawn, The Dance of Peace. You can find more of Will's music at his website, willridenauer.com. And of course, thanks to all of you Plant Yourself podcast patrons. Kim Harrison, Lynn McClellan, Anthony Disson, Brittany Porter, Dominic Maurer, Barbara Whitney, Tammy Black, Amy Good, Amanda Hatherley, Mary Jane Wheeler, Ellen Kennelly, Mr. Cobb, Rachel Behrens, Christine Nielsen, Tina Sharp, Tina Ahern, Jennifer Volkanovsky, David Bizek, The Mysterious, Michelle X. Elspeth Feldman, Leah Stoller, Alan Christensen, Colleen Peck, Michelle Landry, Josina, Sarah Durkis, Rhymes with Circus, Kelly Cameron, Wayne Pedersen, Janet Selby. Hi, Janet. Claire Adams, Tom Franzek, Jeanette Benham, Gil Lacert, David Donahue, Blair Cyber, Dorona Vizov, Gio and Carolyn Argentati, Jody Friesen, Ruth Ann Funderburg, Misha Rosen, Michael Warbeck, the equally mysterious Tracy Z, Aviva Lael, Alicia Lemus, Rebecca Hughes, Val Linneman, Rhymes with Cinnamon, Nick Harper, Martha Bergner, Susan Ahmad, Nolly Levine, the inscrutable Harry R., Susan Laverty, the Panda Vegan, Craig Kovic, Adam Sharp, Karen Burry, Heather Morgan, Kelly Machia, Deanne Norton, Bonnie Lynch at Plant Happy Oregon, Sabina Kurtzels, Nigel Davies, Marion Blum, Teresa Coble, Julian Rodkins, Breed O'Connell, Shannon Hirschman, Linda Ayat, Holm Hedegaard, Izatu Zinwa, Connie Hainline, Aaron Greer, Alicia Davis, Heather O'Connor, Carolyn Jensen, Sherry Orlikoski of Plant Powered for Health, Karen Smith, Scott Mirani, Karen Jo Crabtree, Tanya Lewis, Kirby Burton, Teresa Carell, Kevin McCauley, Elizabeth Rothschild, Ann Jesse, Cheryl Dwyer, Jenny Hazelton, Valerie Peltier, Peter W. Evans, Colleen Harrison, Justin Divich, Joshua Summermeyer, Dennis Bird, Darby Kelly, Lori Fanny, Linnea Lundquist, Valerie Hummel, Emily Iaconelli, Levy Wallach, Rosamund McAtee, Dan Picorni, Stephen Lehman, Patty DiMartino, Mike and Donna Kartz, Deanne Bishop, Bill Brielf, Gunter Schmidt, Marjorie Lewis, Kelly Molden, Trish Adams, Ian Kramer, Nancy Sheldon, Lindsay Bayshore, Gunmarie Hagen, Tracy Gullidge, Laura Heaton, Meg from Mama Says, Rochelle Kennedy, Diana Goldman, Stacey Stokes, Ben Savage, Michael Kay, Holly Butler, David Hughes, Connie Rogers, Claire England, Sally Robertson, Paran Ganshi, Amy Daly, Brian Tourville, Mark Jeffrey Johnson, Josie Dempsey, Karen Schmidt, Pamela Hayden, Emily Perryman, Olga Sidorowska, Allison Corbett, Richard Stone, Lauren Vaught of Edible Musings, Aaron Hasty, Sean Owen, Sagar Nayak, Erica Piedra, Danielle Roberts, and Michael Lushton for your generous support of the podcast. That's it for now. As always, be well, my friends.